Alright. So this is our session, real world experience integrating XPages and DB2. This is good. We're going to talk about what we did with a specific application. My name is Steve Zavaki. I've been a Notes developer since 1996. I got into Notes when I was a tech support person, found a better job, went to resign, and they said, oh, well, we were thinking about training you in Lotus Notes. So I decided to stay, and the rest is history. I've been doing XPages exclusively since 2012. Also consider myself a Java developer. I've spent a lot of time studying it, using it. Probably be my escape from the yellow bubble if that ever happens, although I love it, the yellow bubble. I'm a consultant now at Navy Federal Credit Union out of Milton, Florida. There's my contact information.
And my name is Dwayne Werfel, and I have also been doing Notes since, I think it's late '97. I don't really remember exactly when, but I got started in Notes when my company decided to move our office across the highway from the main office, and they said we need to be able to communicate with the folks back across the street. And I was like, okay, well, the only thing I knew about for that purpose at the time was Microsoft Access, so I went upstairs to talk to the person that knows that. And just happened to be that the senior Notes developer was up there and sort of looked at me like, why would you want to use Access to do that? Why not Notes? And I was like, because I don't know anything about Notes. And he's like, well, come down to my desk and I'll start teaching you. And the story went from there, and I just started doing everything from that point forward with Notes that I could. I started doing XPages in 2011 because our company merged another company that was Exchange, so we had to have a way to have them use our applications. And I'm learning Java, and as Paul explained earlier today, that since I know server-side JavaScript, I apparently know Java. So hey, I have something to add to my resume. Awesome. I've been an employee with Navy Federal since July of last year, and I was a contractor like Steve for a year prior to that, and I also, of course, work in Milton, Florida, like Steve, and my information's up there for contact as well. Next slide. So as a Navy employee, I have the honor of talking a little bit about Navy. A lot of stuff up there, a lot of great stuff, obviously. I'm not going to go over it all because it'll be on our slide deck. A few points I want to point out up there. We actually have 5.5 million members at this time, which will come into play later on when we get into some of our future points. And then the bottom two things, so we've been actually selected as one of Fortune 100's best companies to work for the 5th year. I don't know if it's the 5th year in a row necessarily, but we have been selected 5 times, regardless of in a row or not. It's still a great honor. And then this year we were actually selected as Computer World's best places to work in IT. So obviously, Navy Federal is a very good company to work for. Steve's going to go over the agenda.
All right, first thing is Dwayne's going to talk about why use DB2, and specifically why Navy Federal uses DB2. Then I'm going to come back and talk about the application overview from a high level. Then I'm going to get into the application design, specifically the XPages piece. And then I'm going to give a demo of the application, and then Dwayne's going to come back and talk about DB2 configuration, things you need to know regarding that. And then I'm going to talk about lessons learned, which is essentially some of the problems we've had and fixes that we've had and how we got through them. And then Dwayne's going to come back and tell you what your DBA wants you to know. So let me go ahead and start. Dwayne?
All right, thank you. All right, so why use DB2? So again, like Steve said, this is really more of why Navy is using DB2 than it is why you should use DB2, because in reality, any RDMS system is what you're going to use, and it's really probably going to be dictated according to your company, right? You probably aren't going to have a choice in which one you're going to use. It's going to be dictated to you. So for Navy, there's 3 things. So it was the performance as why, and then obviously there's certain reasons that were important to Navy, and then there's a few references that sort of give you some more information on why DB2 is good compared to the others, or better than the others, I guess. So before I get into, go ahead on the next slide, please. So before I get into too much of the performance, just to give you a little bit of the landscape of Navy. So Navy has all these different ones up there. They have DB2 on Xeos, which is now called Enterprise Server, I think is what the DBA told me. Then they have DB2 LUW, which is Linux, Unix, and Windows. We also have Oracle, SQL Server, and Teradata. So we have the gauntlet of RDMSs to choose from, right? So Navy chose DB2 as the back end for XPages for reasons I'll get into now. The first one, timestamp data type. Now this isn't unique to DB2, but what is unique to this for DB2 is that it actually goes out to the 1 millionth place. So that's 6 places to the right of the decimal. Now, notes in Java, now I can't say the other RDMSs because I haven't looked into those. Notes in Java, I know, only go out to 3 decimal places. Now, I'm going to save you a little bit of time here because I figured this out that when I was trying to figure things out and trying to display that, because normally in Notes world you're never going to have to display 6 places. But for DB2, it displays 6 places, so I was like, well, I need to be able to try to show that in Notes. And I'd get 6 places, but it would just show 3 zeros at the end, and I was like, oh, okay, well, there's 6 places, great. And then I realized the last 3 are always zeros, so what am I doing wrong? Maybe I need to add 3 more Z's to this thing to make it show the proper thing. Well, then I come to realize after researching that Notes just doesn't give you anything beyond 3. It's always going to be zeros. So I was like, okay, well, that's not very good for what I was trying to do, but I just had to deal with it, and hopefully that's something you guys will take away from this, is that you're never going to be able to get past 3. It's always going to be zeros, so don't expect to get anything beyond that at this time. Maybe it'll change in the future. The next thing is DB2 is going to be just as fast if you're using 10 rows in your table or if you have 10 million rows. It will be obviously a little slower, but if you try to go use a notes view with 10 million rows, I'm sure we all seen that wonderful little view, please wait while view is refreshing, right? You're not going to have that when you're using an RDMS system, and specifically DB2. Your data is going to come back, within sub-seconds, which Steve will show you in the demo later, how quickly it shows. There's been some other sessions that have talked about it as well, that talk about how quickly the data comes back. So you don't have to worry about the speed or how much slower it might be if you continue to get bigger and bigger in your organization, which obviously is the hope that you're going to have. The other thing with DB2 is that it's pre-set up so that its storage is allocated for future growth. So what that means is you're never going to encounter an out-of-space condition, which is more or less what you would end up encountering if you use an RDMS system that is based off of your servers. So you have so much size in your server, you get too big, and they're like, oh, well, we need to get more space, so let's add another server. Well, DB2 is just designed with the mainframe so that it automatically just has that growth. When it needs to get bigger, it just says, oh, let me get more space from the mainframe. Let me get more space, more space. So you never have that downtime that you have to worry about adding a server into the system. The other thing is DB2 is designed along with the mainframe for moving large amounts of data. Now, as I said at the beginning about Navy, we have 5.5 million members. So you can imagine how many transactions that's going to equate to. Now, what our DBA told us when we were talking to him was, we end up having roughly 10,000 transactions a second. So if you have that many transactions a second into a table, you can imagine how many rows and how much storage and data you're going to have to be using. And DB2 isn't going to care. It's made to move those large quantities of data throughout your system. So you're not going to have an issue using DB2 with your XPages application, considering you have that many lines or that amount of data. The other thing is something you just need to be aware of, because we're all used to Notes having replication and clustering. DB2 has something similar to that, but they call it data sharing. But it's the same concept where you have your server, they have multiple servers, the data comes here, it communicates across, so it's quote-unquote clusters. And then they might have another server over here that basically also communicates, and that's sort of like replication, because it's not between these two, it's sort of separate in a little over here world, backup server in a sense. But they call it data sharing. Again, it's something that DB2 has. You don't have to get it installed, get it enabled, but your admins may not necessarily have it set up at your organization. There's no reason for them not to have it set up, but they may not have it, so it's just something you might want to be aware of and ask them just so you know if it is. So if you have your application needing failover or something like that, you'll know that that's already set up. So why is all that important to Navy Federal, you ask? Very good question. Navy has their measurement based on the success of having no perceived downtime. Again, 5.5 million members, they need to be able to have no perceived downtime for those 5.5 million members accessing their applications via the web, going on their mobile device or whatever. They need to be able to know that. The timestamp, as I was talking about earlier, helps them determine that with the auditing purposes, so they can see, okay, this is the timestamp here, 6 places, so it was down for X number of milliseconds. Well, okay, that's not really that bad, but for DB2 and Navy, any severe amount of time, in milliseconds even, is bad for them because it's affecting the members that are accessing our application. So that DB timestamp is a very good thing to have. Also, DB2 was determined to be the backend for all future custom XPages applications, specifically those that are dealing with the members' transactional data. Again, 5.5 million members, a lot of data. Anything that we're going to be using, they're using DB2 because of the speed, and all the other stuff is already using DB2 instead of Teradata and stuff like that for the member stuff. Again, it's talking about auditing. And then the big thing, security concerns. I'm sure we've all heard within the last day, Ashley Madison, security concern. Navy doesn't want to be that company that gets put up on the news talking about they were hacked and their information for their 5.5 million members has now just been exposed to some person out there in the world. Now, we all go, well, wait a minute, Notes also has very good security. Again, you may not have the choice in whether or not DB2 is used for that or Notes is used for that. Some people think DB2 is more secure because it's behind a firewall, it has X whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, somebody obviously, in our case, wasn't explaining to the security people, Notes is also behind the firewall and has a lot more levels of security than DB2 does, but we just had to go with what they chose and deal with it, and that was the choice they had. Again, here's the articles from IBM. Again, they are IBM's articles, so they may be a little prejudiced, but they're still articles that explain a little bit to you on DB2 and the speed compared to the other systems. Steve is now going to go over the application overview.
All right. Thanks, Dwayne. It dropped my VM, so I'm going to have to fall back on your computer to do that.
All right.
So be ready for that. So get it ready, and then we'll switch the connection. All right, application overview. So let me talk first about what this does. Is it replaces it's a front end, an XPages front end to a mainframe application that controls ATM machines. So it opens, closes them, settles them, which is like advancing the banking date, and if they need to be added money to, and so forth. So what they used to do up until last month is they would use a green screen to enter all the data in the terminal, and then they would go into a Microsoft Access database and record what they did. So what our application does is it does everything. It does the front end. It talks to the mainframe via host bridge, and it records the transactions in the DB2 all at the same time. So there's not a two-step process. So this, in case any younger people here, this is what a green screen looks like. And there's access in the trash. And this is what the application looks like when it talks to them. So that this replaces this for them.
Nice job.
And so this is a very high level, 10,000 feet overview of the application. This is XPages, DB2. It uses host bridge technology, which is like essentially screen scraping to access the mainframe application. So I'm not going to talk about that, but if you want to ask me afterwards or in the questions, I can do my best to answer questions about that. I'm not a mainframe guy and don't want to ever be. But this is what we're going to talk about. So let's go get in the application design. Okay, so I was the first XPages developer on this project, so I had a lot of say on how to design it. So I had been around the block a few times, so I knew kind of what didn't work and what did work. And I was also on another project at the time that didn't use any Java backend. It was all server-side JavaScript, here, there, everywhere in the application, and it was very confusing, difficult to follow. So these are the principles I tried to put into place when I designed the application. So I read what you guys write. I read your blogs. I try to I consider everything what people are sharing within the community. Try to minimize SSJS. I didn't say eliminate, minimize. Try to follow the MVC design pattern. Everyone's talking about the MVC design pattern last summer when I was designing this. This is the best of my understanding. This is a little different than what we heard in Ulrich's presentation earlier. It's its own flavor, so to speak. And then last year I came to MWLUG, awesome conference, and I heard Toby Samples speak on Hibernate with XPages. Came back with a head full of steam. Yes, we got to do this. We got to do this. But it was eventually shot down because we had a previous project that uses straight JDBC, and they said, well, why don't we just do it like that? I'm like, okay. So I also consider the golden rule. I want to make an application that is easy to follow afterwards, because we all, even ourselves, we have trouble following the things that we did if we didn't do it right. Those are the principles. And here's a picture of what this looks like. This is the way that I do the MVC. So of course you got the XPages custom controls at top in the view layer, and DB2, which runs on the mainframe, is the model layer. The control layer is Java, managed beans, POJOs. It's also jars that live in the ext folder on the server. And SQL is the delivery mechanism between these two. So, without Hibernate, I'm not calling Java methods to update. I'm actually calling SQL code. So, how do I talk to the front end from the controller layer? So, I'll go into that next. So, the way I do it is to use ViewScope. Started out having managed beans with fields for each design. Each element was bound to the bean, and they had getters and setters. And it kind of became a pain because it seemed like extra work in that, say if I have an integer field and I bind it, it has to have a default value in Java, and then that shows up in your UI, and you really don't want a value there yet, and it just became kind of a pain. ViewScope's great because you can put in anything. Everything's kind of like an object, or it's kind of like a string, and you can put whatever you want in there. You can put a whole contents of a grid, a JSON object, completely just stick it in ViewScope and then read it. And it keeps, so everything in the UI is tied to ViewScope. And it's also nice because it cleans up after itself. When you go to the next page, it's gone. You don't have to, it's not, it's analogous to a managed being tied to the view, but I think it's easier. So now's demo time, so I'm going to switch. Unfortunately, I'm having technical difficulty. Is yours not online?
No, I'll try to see if we can.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do when you do that is I'm going to skip. I have a backup plan for showing code. So
there you go. I'm going to switch to.
okay, you plug this in. Wait. If you don't get online right away, I will go to my backup plan. So the purpose of the demo here is, we can talk about how fast things are all day, but to actually see it is a benefit. This is, I know it's 2015, I'm going to demo IE8. So we don't often have a choice of what browser the company uses, and it had to work with IE8. They are actually getting up on Edge, but they're using compatibility mode to go back to 8, so what's the point? I could talk about the reason why, but I will. It is recorded.
I would never record it back.
Oh, yes. Hi, Dave.
I am using a custom login page. If I have time, there's something I want to share about that. Okay, so yeah, in IE8, the debug toolbar kind of hangs down like this. So this is the home page of the application. This is where they do most of their work. Talk to the mainframe. It is not super fast. So I'm going to just go ahead and skip to the search. Okay, and this isn't supposed to be pretty. We had fights to try to get this thing as nice as it is, and it's not even that great. So, all right, so let me pick this particular ATM, which we have now. I'm going to go. The fight to get to use this jQuery plugin was one I'm proud of that I won.
So it's working.
Just pick today first, and all right, here we go. Search, boom. So it's, I was probably about 400, 500 milliseconds, about a half a minute.
You have to scroll around the bottom and hit the scroll bar.
Which
This one.
Why?
Scroll up to the right, and then you'll get another scroll bar to the right.
Oh. This is his laptop, so I didn't practice on this. So there's actually like 39 pages of data, but like Dwayne said in the beginning, the amount of data when you're using a relational backend, DB2, or even Oracle or anything, the amount of data doesn't really matter because it's going to be super fast with large data sets. So let me go and do that one more time just so you can see it. I'm pretty impressed with how this came out. All right, make a different ATM, type it in, whoops. This is actually this is a test obviously, but this is what we rolled in. I just lost. It's not responding. Thank you, Wi-Fi.
Yep.
That's the message I got.
Yeah.
All right.
Actually logs you in pretty quickly.
So why don't you
Try to
get back on, and I will show some of the code. Tell me when you're back on. All right. So
Yeah, just switch your screen.
yeah. Thank you. Are you back on? Or go back.
You want the code?
No, I don't want. I want it live.
Yeah. That happened. Try it.
Okay. While you're doing that.
You want to?
Yeah. Sorry, guys. That's my plan. You back on?
Go ahead. You do it.
No.
Safer.
Are you on?
It seems like it.
Come on. What's going on? Sorry, guys. Shift to function F4, right?
Come back on.
Oh,
Come back in.
let's give it a shot.
We'll see.
About halfway through this slide, right?
Might have to do the shift F4 thing, function F4 again.
We gotta wait for this. All right, let's. Something else won't move.
It's just moving.
It went up.
Eric saw it.
Yeah.
Test.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I'm going to skip the second try of that because I want to show you this.
So we can take your word for it that it's working.
Yes, you can.
We got it.
There's actually 4 queries on this calendar page. So when I went to there, I showed there was 4 separate queries. The other ones are down here, and I'm going to take a chance to show them. So, well, guess what? You'd think that
Maybe it
it's
likes me.
Carlton would
Want me to
have
navigate?
All right.
My VPN drops.
You're on. You want me to navigate? Maybe that's better.
Finally responded. So there's actually 4 queries happening here. If I go ahead and I push this, it doesn't. It comes back. And so this is actually loading quite a bit of data. There's like 3 different grids, and then another query that loads some time data. You can click on here, and it's very fast. All right, I'm going to show you the code. All right, good. Okay, so this is my backup, but what this is showing you essentially is that every one of these everything on the UI is just simply bound to ViewScope. There's not any conditions in here of what's happening. It's all fairly straightforward. And the next thing is the button that I couldn't show you that's going to load up the data is next. And what it does is this is server-side JavaScript, and this is calling Java methods. So there's not that much code here, but a lot is going on. So first thing it's doing is it's actually calling a Java method where all the business logic is. It's calling to check whether the mainframe's online or not. And then it's going to come back determining on whether this is true or false. It's going to load this method that's actually going to populate the screen. So let's look at that. Okay. So here's part of the code for loading the screen. The thing I want to point out is if you do this method, if you use ViewScope, you have to get a handle to it in each method. It might not be the most efficient way. There might be a better way of doing it, but the performance doesn't. We had to do it this way. We tried to get a handle, but you have to do it this way each time. You can use application scope, session scope. You can get a handle to it once and you got it, but with ViewScope you got to do this. So this is just some validation UI stuff. Okay. So here's the query that we're calling. We're actually going to pass, we're using a prepared statement class, and I'm going to talk about that later in the session. And so we just pass the parameter there at the end, whatever ATM that they want to look up. And then here you can see we just get the result set and we pass it to ViewScope, and it's part of a partial refresh of that. As long as what is in ViewScope is in your partial refresh, boom, it comes up very quick. So I wish I could show you this live, but it's a good thing to have backups. Okay, so the next thing, Dwayne's going to talk about DB2 configuration, and I'm going to try to get to this working.
So this way you don't have the 64K limit, right?
Yeah, there's no such thing as a 64K limit.
2 questions. The Java, was it a bean or was it just?
It was a managed bean. It could have been a Pojo, but then I would have to I'd have to create it each
Good.
time.
But when you did it, you could have passed the ViewScope data from the server side script to
Yes.
it.
Mm-hmm. And I did actually in that one of those. I was actually passing ViewScope.
But you were actually, but the other one, you were actually using the Java server faces to get the view scope.
In the Java, I'm just getting a handle to view scope.
But you could have passed it, but you.
You know, I'm not. That's a good question.
As a bean parameter, you could have passed it.
I don't know if you can pass view scope. That's a good
Well,
point.
you passed just as a variable, just as a string.
But he was binding to a control, so that's why.
Yeah, I don't know if I can
And he was
do that.
pushing back,
You want to try?
putting values back in.
Yeah.
You guys should try.
Yeah, I can switch it here.
Okay,
Okay, so
intermediary between the Java V and the view scope to mirror those properties.
all right, so thanks for the attempt to do a demo, but because of the wonderful restrictions of the Wi-Fi we have, we couldn't get it the way we wanted to. So you're wondering how you have to configure the system in order for the DB2 to actually do this with XPages. Of course, the very first thing you're going to have is your device, your drivers, right? Now, I'm sure we all can raise our hands and say we know how to download the drivers, but can we all raise our hands and know which version of the drivers we're going to need to use? Probably not going to know that unless you're the only person that's doing it and you're doing the DBA stuff as well. Otherwise, your best bet is going to be go to your DBA or your middleware person. They're going to know what version to get and then go download it for you so that you're good to go out of the box. Now, what you're going to do is we installed it in the JVM lib.ext folder. Understand that that's not the preferred method that IBM suggests. They suggest an OSGI plugin. Unfortunately, we asked before we left why we're not using OSGI plugins, and our admin said it had something to do with deployment.
Deployment procedures, they want to do it this certain way, so they're making the tools governing how the best way to do it. So,
just another thing that we as developers have to deal with in our day-to-day basis. Yes, sir.
Did you then have to do anything in the security Java policy file?
We're going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
very good question.
That's a downside of that.
Not a perfect lead in because it's 2 or 3 more steps, but good question. So now, as you're developing, you obviously don't need to have your DB2 drivers rather installed locally. But if you're going to test an agent, Lotus script or Java agent, you are going to have them installed locally. Now, if you don't have them installed locally, when you compile, you are going to get compilation errors. Don't worry about the compilation errors because your code's running on the server, and the server will have the drivers, and everything will work hunky-dory. But you're still going to see the errors, so if you're one of those people that are like, I can't see the errors when I'm compiling, I'll freak out, then don't have them not installed locally.
But if you test a Java agent,
Yeah,
do you
that's what I
need to
said.
have?
Yeah, I said that, yeah. Were you sleeping? Always sleeping.
He was thinking.
Yeah, right, thinking. Extension library. Obviously, the extension library is required. Obviously, it comes out of the box with your designer. Unfortunately, the version that came out of the box wasn't quite working for us, and we had to go get the newer version, which we ended up getting the December 2014 version. And it was partially out of selfishness because we knew it had jQuery and Bootstrap in it, right? And Steve wanted to have that because it had jQuery and Bootstrap and he wanted to use Bootstrap. So it was sort of selfish, but there was a reason behind it because the out-of-the-box one wasn't working for us.
The October one didn't work.
October?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, the October didn't work.
Yeah.
I remember that. But it worked out in the end for us having the newer version. So how are we talking about the Java properties? This is something, again, you just have to be aware of that it exists on a Domino server. It's the admin's responsibility, not something you as a developer are going to have to mess with, but it could impact you, so you need to know about it. What it does is it controls the security permissions for the specific actions and locations. So we had our jars in the JVM lib.ext directory, which means that that Java properties file had to be modified, and this is just a sample code that's basically granting that jar file access, full access. Your admins may decide, I'm not granting your jar files full access, I'm going to give it XYZ access. They're going to know how to modify this to have it grant the proper access that they feel that your jars need, and they may go down and give it just the minimum access and then go say okay, and then let you come back and go, that's still not working, and incrementally increase it more and more and more. They're probably not going to give you grant full access. Again, we're in unit, so in unit they don't really care.
production.
Did we do it in production? Okay. Well, again, that's their decision, not ours. If they listen to us and do what we say, that's awesome. We'd have a wonderful world all the time, right?
Is this
But they
supposed to
don't.
be Java policy or properties?
Steve?
You know what?
No, it's Java properties.
Is it as a party?
There's a Java policy file.
Yeah, I think it has to go in the policy file.
I think it does.
So,
It's the security
And then there's a
I thought lib
separate.
extension already had all permissions by default.
No,
No,
he had to do this.
yeah. And if you
But
install a
it's fine.
fix pack, it overwrites that. There's
Yeah.
a separate policy file
Yes.
Oh, is there?
that doesn't get overwritten.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's.
Can you avoid that if you put the jars right into the notes database?
Yeah, good question, David. We tried that, we couldn't do it. Not because it talks in DB2, we couldn't do it because of the part that talks to the mainframe. So, if you can put the jars in your NSF and then get it to work, then I advise you. We spent lots of time banging our heads against it.
We definitely try to put the jars into the NSF itself because then it's obviously a lot more portable from server to server, rather than the admins have to remember, okay, which jars do I need to put on the server when you move your application? And so we try to help them out, but it just unfortunately
Or
never works.
if you use those, you got a plugin, it's not an issue.
Right. Oh, yeah.
The
Can you
latest,
come talk to them by chance, Howard?
the latest extension library has a tool to build a plugin.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, so if you're using SQL to do something, you're going to benefit by having a tool that allows you to sort of test your SQL that you're writing before you actually put it in your code and put it out there in production and everything like that, right? Our company chose WinSQL as the tool. WinSQL has a enterprise license version that's only $99 per license. Now, it's not the best tool to use out there. There's a tool called Toad that our DBA told us about that's a lot better, but it's a lot more expensive than $99. So we went with this version, which I'm sure many companies out there are going to go, hey, let's go to the cheapest version possible and not really care whether it's beneficial or great for you to use or not. That's just what they're going to do.
There's an IBM Data Studio, which is free.
Right, yeah, and for us, we do have that, but the DBAs seem to be the only ones that are allowed to use that. Because I've asked about using it, and they're like, yeah, we have it, but no, you can't use it. I'm like,
We'll buy one.
okay. Yeah. Okay, so WinSQL. So this, for those that haven't seen, who hasn't seen or used WinSQL? Dave, okay, quite a few people. All right, so this is it. It's very easy to use. Your DBAs, you connect to your proper ODBC, you put in your username and password that you would use for your normal domain, unless if they have Active Directory authentication you use when you log in, they may have it set up where you actually have login credentials that are separate from that. They're specific for your DB system. Once you log in, you'll get all this stuff here, which is basically going to show you everything that's in your system, not just your stuff. It's going to show you everything that's in there. Tables, views, whatever. Here's a sort of exploded out of one particular table that we have, and it shows all the different columns. And then if you choose a specific column, it gives you information over there telling you what kind of data type, the size, scale. So if there's a character field, it might say 6, 20, whatever, and tells you if there's a default value, whether it's null allowed or stuff like that. Steve will go into a little bit more on the null allowed and some of these other things later, as well as I will. The custom connection manager. So this is something that comes in the relational controls, and we had to use this because normally you're going to use the DB2 JDBC XML file as a standard. However, that has the username and password hard-coded. Well, we as Navy don't allow to use hard-coded username and password. So we had to basically hack the connection manager so that what we do is we end up going to a admin-controlled application that stores the username, password, URL information. We grab the information from there, and then we use that information as our connection manager to connect to DB2 and grab all of our data and do everything like that. Steve did write a blog series on it that explains some of this. I think 2 parts of it explain that portion, and then the rest of it explains a whole bunch of other stuff that we had to do in this project. That ends what I'm talking about for the configuration. Steve will go into lessons learned. Yeah, advance the slides for you.
Yeah. All right, lesson's doing good. We're running short on time, so. All right, this is really important. Our DBA wasn't the most user-friendly DBA, and so we had a lot of issues. And part of this talk was, if you ever have to do this, think about these things ahead of time, because it would save you a lot of trouble. So take the time and understand your requirements. We had a 200-page SRD to design this. Understand it, what's assigned to you. If you're making up stuff as you go, it's going to be harder. But understand what you need. For example, he gave us a status field of 15 characters, and we needed 25 because we had a status actually that long. So understand, what you need beforehand, because our DBA would put up a wall around him and say, well, I need every change and I need it all thought through, and you need to provide the SQL, and then in 3 days I'll do it for you. And we had lots of strict deadlines in this. Another thing to ask your DBA is things we take for granted in notes is we get a last updated field. For each table, we get last updated, we get created date, we know who the last user was who updated it. We don't have to plan that, it comes for free. It doesn't come when you get a table in your relational database. So go ahead and ask them for this. There's no, it's not resource intensive, it doesn't hurt to add this at all. It comes kind of built in. If you don't ask for it, you won't get it. Our DBA made every column not null, which was very problematic. In our code, we actually had to, for date fields, I had to actually force 12/31/9999 to specify a null value. Real pain, and that code's actually still in the application because it worked and we didn't have time to strip it out. So also, another thing, this is old slides. Picture a many-to-many relationship. You have to have a table. Oh, I do have it. Okay, so here's a many-many relationship. In the physical design of your database, you have to have this intermediate table. But this is of no use to you. This is just for the relational structure. What I would advise is ask your DBA to make a trigger. So when you update this, this gets updated. Or when you update this, this gets updated. We didn't have this, so what we had to do is we had to write this, commit the change, wait for success, and then write this. Well, there's a lot more coding involved on our end, and there's more things that could go wrong. If this was just automatically done, because this is of no use to you. You don't need this. You need this, and you need that. So that's something you want to ask your DBA. And then the prepared statement class I showed you earlier in the code, use this. It also is a security. It prevents against SQL injection, because I'll show you in a minute why it does that. And it also prevents against problematic data. So go to next. Okay, so real quick here, this really happened. We have a branch in a place in Mississippi called Dyberville. It has apostrophe in the name. Apostrophe, yes. This was not done by an XPages person. This was done by a Java developer did this. He's no longer with the company. And so when he was using string concatenation to build his SQL statements. So when it gets to this, it means it's the end, and we were having this agent fail, and we have one shot on these ATMs per day, and we were in crunch time, and it was failing because of this. And he was told, use prepared statement. Go to the next one. This is what it looks like. You got these nice question marks. You can set, you create your prepared statement. You pass in your code. You set the string or set ints and date. Execute it. It works great. Okay. All right. All right. I'm gonna do this since I think there's a benefit. When we moved to integration environment, what I did is, in the theme, I was loading resources. I was loading jQuery, and I was loading that date plugin that is used on nearly every page in the application. Well, once we moved to a new environment, we kept getting these 403 errors. And I was using the theme to load it, And what was happening was that wasn't labeled as a public access, that particular, and so it was having trouble loading that. So the fix was, next slide, thanks to Eric, who answered my Stack Overflow question. So the fix was, if you're going to load stuff on a theme, third-party stuff, if you're going to put it on every page in your login page, you can exclude your login page, and then this fixed it. So just something to file away if you ever have mysterious 403 errors, and 403 is security exceptions. So that means the page is there, but I can't load it, as opposed to a 404, which it doesn't always. Okay, next section is what should DBA want you to know.
All right, so we picked this particular image because DBAs often think that they're the king and have control over everything and basically can rule your world, which in a sense they can, but you hope that they don't have that attitude and they know that, hey, we all need to work together to make things work. Over here,
Oh, sorry. You got it. You got it.
So, let's skip that slide. Just come over here. All right, so again, when you're writing your SQL, obviously we're not SQL experts. We don't necessarily know maybe how to properly write your SQL to make it the most efficient. Luckily, your DBA has a tool called DB2 Explain. The DB2 Explain actually shows you the strengths and weaknesses of your SQL. It actually will check your syntax, which is great. That's what we all want every tool to do for us, is check and make sure we have our semicolons in there, apostrophes, whatever is required by the syntax. It also shows you the cost of running your SQL, so you get the idea of, is it going to take you 3 seconds or 10 seconds to get that subset of data that you're looking for to display. Then it displays the path that it takes to obtain your data. So are you taking the highway, or are you taking that wonderful alternate route to get to that smallest subset of data, which is what your DBA is going to reiterate to you over and over again that he wants you to get to as quickly as possible to use the littlest amount of resources in his system as you possibly can. Now, DB2 Explain is the tool, but IBM Data Studio is the product that actually displays those DB2 Explain results. Now, this next slide is showing you, here's your SQL, basic, nothing real fancy, and then that's what the DB2 Explain looks like. Now, don't worry about looking at it and going, I have no idea what that's saying, it means nothing to me. Your DBA will hopefully be able to explain this to you and tell you what you need to look at and what you need to work on. What I can tell you is these numbers here are basically the number of rows that it has at that particular stage of the cycle, but it's showing you every step along the way of how long it's taking to get there and what it's doing and all that good stuff. Again, your DBA should be able to explain more of that for you. Again, what Steve talked about earlier, understand your requirements prior to going to your DBA. I'll just give you a real quick example. My very first project that I dealt with, which dealt with DB2, the tech lead went to the DBA and said, all right, I need to have these views created, and I need 151 of them. And he said, why do you need 151? Well, that's how many notes views I have. And he's like, all right, go ahead and create me a change request for all 151, and I'll do it for you. She created 151 change requests for him to create those. He turned around and still came back to her and said, I'm not creating 151 for you. Let's think about this and talk about it. So from that point, we obviously, me and the other developer took over and said, okay, let's start talking about these with the DBA, figuring out what we need to do, learning some more about it. Again, the moral of what I've been trying to say anyway really is you have to work with your DBA, right? You don't have the final decision in how things are developed, which is what we're all used to doing as a notes developer, having total control of your form, your views, your fields, how things talk to each other, communicate, show, display. Now you're going to have to work with a DBA. Your DBA is now going to be your middleman in that process that you're going to have to be able to build a relationship with, work with, and get to love you and get to love them so you can get things done and not take 3 days to do it. Oops, sorry. Again, you and you alone on your data. DBA just wants you to not realize that when you come to them saying that something's not working, that, hey, it's not my table, It's probably the data you're putting into my table that's making your stuff not work. So look at your code, see if your code's doing what it's supposed to do before you come to them saying there's a problem with it. I'm not even going to go over that decimal type thing. I don't have enough time. So again, take time up front to save time and frustration in the end. Steve didn't mention this, so I'll just briefly go over it. On our project here, we were going forward, we were doing things, and because of my previous experience with my other project, I was telling Steve and the others, hey guys, we need to stop for a second and we need to think about our DB2 and the structure we're setting up before we start getting too far down the road and we're going into integration and realizing that we have a status column that's only 15 and we have 25 characters we have to put in there, and now we have to go back and revert, and then because of our process, once you're in integration, you've changed something, you have to go back to unit testing and then back to integration. You can't just change it and then continue on from there, because there's a whole other department that does your SQA testing that's just not the way they work. Insert timestamp. Steve mentioned it. Now that's been available in DB2 forever. It's not something new. Unlike the update timestamp, which is called the DB2 row change timestamp, that was new in version 9. So again, back to what I talked about at the beginning, if you don't know what version of DB2 you have, you may not actually have the ability to have an update row timestamp. So if you have version 9, you're good to go. Again, these two items, which we're used to having all the time in notes, aren't available in DB2, but they are zero cost to getting them put into your table. If you do DB explain before and after, you're not going to see any change in that DB2 explain chart as far as slowness in getting that data because of those two fields, or data elements rather. Maintain your data integrity. This sort of really goes more in tune if you're trying to convert your notes application data over to DB2, because we all know that we've run across multiple applications where you might have a field that's classified as a date field, but 3 years ago the person had it as a text field, putting dates in it, or they're putting a date and a name or whatever, and now you're trying to put in DB2 for a date and it's not working, and you're going, I don't understand why it's not working. Well, because your data is not right. Your DBA is going to try to build as many safeguards as possible in there to prevent you from putting erroneous data in. If they're a good DBA, obviously, they're going to do that. DB2, again, if you have it classified as a date field, it's not going to allow you to put anything other than a date field in there. If you have it classified as a number, it's not going to let you put text in there. DB2 just isn't going to allow that. So you sort of have to worry about that on inserting, but it's more for converting data that you would have to concern yourself with that. Table structure. Again, your DBAs have knowledge. They're the experts, just like we're the experts in what we do. They're the experts in what they do. Go to them, asking them for assistance when you're getting ready to go down this path. You are going to eventually go down this path as a notes developer. Your company is eventually going to probably go this route. At some point, some CIO will come in and decide that DB2 is what we want to have for our backend. Notes is old, blah, 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 and you're going to have to learn it. So go to your DBA to get them to help you with that. I can go over that last bullet. And so, question, but left out our conclusion slide. So in conclusion, you have to work with a DBA. So make sure you get to know them, learn what chocolates they like, learn what things they like to talk about, what beer they like. Anything you have to do to get on their good side, so you don't have to be like us and fight with the DBA. You don't have to wait for them to do something in 3 days. Make life easier for you. You're not working in a silo anymore, right? We have to work with other people. Again, your CIO may leave, and new person comes in that knows nothing about notes. All they know is Microsoft SharePoint, and want to go to DB2 as a backend, and you're going, okay, I don't really know SQL, but like Java, we all were probably afraid of Java when it first came out, or at least I know I was. Don't be afraid of SQL. Start trying to learn it now, because at some point you may have to learn it. So try to get your feet wet now, and that's all I have to say for that. So if there's any other questions other than the ones that have been asked already, the floor is open.
Steve?
Do you have any roles in the sense that a user might see a subset of information? Like I might see certain kinds of stuff, and you'll see different stuff.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, you would pass that in. You probably have a different method for. It would be a different SQL call. So it would be different.
Different SQL call depending on who you are.
Depending on who you are.
Okay.
We actually, in my first application, we actually used the nav, and we had groups set up in there, and we would go to the nav and get those individuals and then assign them a role, and then from there you would basically set up the same ways we do now. You say, okay, this particular section is only visible to these particular people.
Cool.
Steve?
Yeah, a cool feature that, we have a AS400 DB2 backend, and we're migrating a AS400 app to XPages 2, but so my DBAs are Java developers, so I'm lucky. So we figured out a way, the company didn't like Notes because of our business intelligence guys that work upstairs with the directors, because they couldn't access the data to marry it with Lawson and other financials. So let's just get rid of it.
Right.
I want to make my life easier. So we turned on Domino Data Access Services, where you could get the REST Service API. And then in the DB2, there's a cool feature where you can say, I want to create a table off of this REST service. And then you have the Domino data. It just builds in real time.
So the DBA has to allow that ability for that table to be created, right?
Yeah. So
yeah.
now we're pushing all our notes data. So the user is still using the applications as they were designed, but now our business intelligence guys have all those documents in the DB2 via the REST service. It's all free.
There you go. Another way.
You mentioned the use of the extension library.
Yes.
But what was, and I didn't see what we're using it for here.
We actually, the custom connection manager actually extends one of the extension library. Instead of, what it does is it extends it in Java to override the method that pulls from the XML file. IBM recommends just putting your credentials in an XML file that's securely on your server, but that wasn't good enough for our company, so we go look it up. Jack?
On your calendar page, you said you had 4 grids and you were doing 4 queries to pull that data. So you're saying I could be pulling data from 4 different tables, each would have 20,000 records, and I still wouldn't see an impact?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yep.
Where is your server located?
The servers are all in Virginia.
So
yeah, I'm actually VPNing into servers in Virginia. Yeah.
The one thing I guess I didn't mention it though, when you're on the relational controls, that when you implement them, it's in the XSP part. I can't remember where it's at. Where the packages, you have to check the boxes for the packages. There's actually the relational controls is a separate package from the core package. Brian Gleason actually was kind enough to answer that question for me when I was going through this problem, and answered that and said, "No, you have to go check this box and to do that." And it's like, "Oh, okay. Why is it not?" He's like, "It's separate. Don't go there." It's like, "Okay, whatever you say, Brian. Good to go. Thanks." So just remember that as well. You have to have a separate package check for those.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
It's not part of the core and it's not supported.
Oh, okay. There you go.
It should be in the course as well.
The JDBC stuff?
Yeah, it's not in the core.
Not yet. I mean, in the next builds. It's in the core.
Next.
Not,
When's the next?
When's
next?
next?
Yeah.
I know next.
All right. No more questions?
Any questions?